Director, the first time you saw Donald Trump's name was in the Epstein files. Did you close the files or keep reading?
I have reviewed not the entirety of the files, so
you haven't reviewed all of the Epstein files?
Personally, no.
You're the director of the FBI. This is the largest sex trafficking case the FBI has ever been a part of. Buck stops at the top, and your testimony today is you have not reviewed all of the files.
What I've been doing is been busy providing the safest country this country has seen in modern U.S. history.
Okay, so what just went down in Congress is absolutely nuclear, like career-ending, institution-destroying nuclear. The FBI director, Kash Patel, just got absolutely eviscerated in a congressional hearing, and it wasn't just the usual partisan back and forth. This was members from both parties united in fury over bombshell revelations that Patel has been using the FBI as Trump's personal protection squad, firing agents who investigated Trump, withholding the Epstein files when Trump's name came up, using government resources for personal benefit, and doing it all while claiming he was just following orders. The new filings that dropped mid-November 2025 are devastating. They contain documentation, testimony, evidence that Patel systematically weaponized the FBI to serve Trump's political interests, and Congress just spent hours grilling him on live television while he squirmed and deflected and basically admitted to everything. But before we go any further, real quick, let's be honest, you can't really trust mainstream media anymore. That's why we built Pump Politics to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, join our free newsletter. We'll send the news straight to your inbox every day. Just click the link in the description to join, and if you just want to support what we're doing, join us, be part of the community that actually cares about the truth. All right, let's get back to the video. Let me set the scene because the details are absolutely crucial. November 17th through 18th, 2025, Capitol Hill, a joint congressional hearing on FBI conduct in the Epstein files. Kash Patel is there to testify. And right before the hearing, new court filings drop. These aren't just allegations. These are lawsuits from fired FBI agents, documents obtained through Freedom of Information Act requests, internal FBI communications, all painting a damning picture of Patel's tenure. The filings show that Patel fired veteran FBI agents at Trump's direct request, that he specifically targeted agents who'd worked on investigations involving Trump or his associates, that he told people his job depended on removing these agents, that he was taking orders from the White House on personnel decisions that should be independent. One particularly damning quote from the court filings has Patel allegedly saying, "I had to fire the people my superiors told me to fire because my ability to keep my own job depended on the removal of the agents who worked on cases involving the president." Let that sink in. The FBI director admitting that he fired agents not because of their performance, not because of misconduct, but because the president wanted them gone, and Patel's own job security depended on complying. That's not law enforcement, that's political purging. That's turning the FBI into a tool of presidential revenge, and it's exactly what critics have been warning about since Patel took over. The scale of the purge is staggering. The filings document that roughly 13,000 FBI agents, about a quarter of the entire bureau, were reassigned to immigration enforcement, pulled out of their normal investigative roles, and sent to the border to fulfill Trump's political priorities. Meanwhile, numerous others were outright fired, not for cause, not after due process, just targeted removal of people who were seen as insufficiently loyal to Trump or who had the misfortune of working on cases that made Trump uncomfortable. This is unprecedented. This is the kind of thing that happens in authoritarian regimes, not in the United States. But it gets worse. The filings also allege that Patel used government resources for personal benefit, government jets for private travel, FBI protection details for his partner, who has no official reason to need protection, expense account abuse, the works. So while he's firing career agents and claiming budget constraints, he's living large on taxpayer money, using his position to benefit himself personally while gutting the Bureau's investigative capabilities. That's corruption on top of politicization. And then there's the Epstein files situation. Members of Congress confronted Patel about his shifting position on disclosure. Initially, when it looked like the files might not implicate anyone in Trump's orbit, Patel was fine with releasing them. Talked about transparency, about the public's right to know. But then, as the files were being prepared for release,
Here's what I've learned in my government service. I don't give a damn what they say about me as long as I'm succeeding in the mission. We're succeeding in the mission because the men and women of the FBI have never been empowered to do more work and to hit the streets harder than by President Trump's authorities and resources he's given us. And so all I care about is that we are capturing more child predators than ever before, taking more drugs off the streets than ever before, that we are capturing murderers at a significantly historic rate, and we're delivering this country the lowest murder rate in recorded history. That are facts that you cannot dispute. But you can come at me all you want. I don't care.
Thank you, Director, for that.
Trump's name started appearing in concerning contexts, and suddenly Patel reversed course, started claiming that grand jury secrecy and sealed court orders prevented any disclosure, started fighting tooth and nail to keep everything hidden. The timing is suspicious as hell, and members of Congress weren't subtle about pointing that out. During the hearing, lawmakers from both parties were livid, Democrats obviously, but also Republicans who are uncomfortable with how blatantly Patel has politicized the FBI. They took turns grilling him, demanding explanations, presenting him with documents, and asking him to explain them, and Patel's responses were evasive and defensive. He claimed he was just following procedures, that personnel decisions were based on legitimate management concerns, that the Epstein files issue was about legal constraints, not politics, but his explanations didn't hold up under scrutiny because the documented evidence contradicts everything he was saying. At one point, Patel was confronted with his own alleged statement about firing agents because his superiors told him to, and he couldn't deny it. He tried to contextualize it, tried to claim it was being misinterpreted, but the quote was in a sworn court filing, in a lawsuit from a fired agent. Patel's lawyers will have to respond to that lawsuit, and if the quote is accurate, it's potentially criminal. It's abuse of power. It's obstruction of justice. It's using a federal agency for political purposes. All things that carry serious legal consequences. The hearing lasted hours. It was televised. Millions of people watched the FBI director get destroyed by Congress, watched him unable to provide satisfactory answers to basic questions about why he's fired so many agents, why he's withheld the Epstein files, why he's used government resources for personal benefit. The optics are absolutely terrible for Patel and for Trump because this isn't some vague accusation. This is documented abuse of power, and it's all playing out in public. All right, let's dive deep into what these new filings actually contain and why they're so devastating. The lawsuits come from multiple fired FBI agents. These aren't political appointees. These are career law enforcement professionals. People who spent decades at the Bureau, who worked on major cases, who had stellar performance reviews, and who were fired after Patel became director for reasons that don't hold up to scrutiny. Their lawsuits claim wrongful termination. They're suing for back pay, for reinstatement, for damages, but more importantly for the public, their lawsuits contain detailed allegations about why they were really fired. The pattern is clear. Agents who worked on the Russia investigation, fired. Agents who participated in investigations of Trump associates, fired. Agents who testified to Congress about Trump-related matters, fired. Agents who were involved in the classified documents case, fired. The common thread is Trump. These agents all did something in their professional capacity that Trump didn't like, and under Patel's leadership, that became a firing offense. Not officially, of course. The official reasons for termination were things like performance issues, or failure to meet Bureau standards, or organizational restructuring. But the lawsuits present evidence that these were pretexts, that the real reason was political retaliation. One lawsuit includes internal FBI emails showing Patel's office requesting lists of agents who worked on specific Trump-related investigations. These requests came shortly after Patel took over. The emails show discussions about personnel adjustments and ensuring leadership alignment, bureaucratic language that sounds innocuous until you realize what it means. It means identifying agents who investigated Trump and getting rid of them. The lawsuit includes testimony from FBI officials who were uncomfortable with these requests but felt pressure to comply, who raised concerns but were told this was coming from the top and wasn't negotiable. Another lawsuit details how an agent with 25 years of experience and multiple commendations was fired within weeks of Patel becoming director. The agent had worked on financial crimes cases involving Trump Organization entities, had never had a disciplinary issue, received excellent performance reviews consistently, and suddenly, under Patel, was terminated for alleged performance deficiencies that appeared out of nowhere. The lawsuit presents evidence that the performance review justifying termination was fabricated after the decision to fire had already been made, that Patel's office decided who to fire and then created paperwork to justify it. The reassignment of 13,000 agents to immigration enforcement is a separate but related scandal. The FBI's mission is investigating federal crimes, things like terrorism, organized crime, public corruption, white-collar fraud, cybercrimes. Immigration enforcement is not traditionally an FBI function. That's ICE and Border Patrol. But Trump has made immigration his signature issue, and Patel, as Trump's loyalist, redirected a quarter of the FBI to immigration work. This gutted investigative teams, cases were dropped or delayed, witnesses and informants were abandoned. Ongoing investigations into serious crimes were deprioritized so agents could process immigration paperwork and conduct border operations. Career FBI officials are documented expressing alarm about this. Internal memos obtained through FOIA show officials warning that the reassignments were damaging the Bureau's ability to fulfill its core mission, that expertise was being wasted, that morale was plummeting. But these concerns were ignored because the point wasn't effective law enforcement. The point was serving Trump's political agenda, making it look like Trump was tough on immigration by deploying FBI agents to the border, regardless of whether that was good policy or good use of resources. The personal corruption allegations add another layer. The filings allege Patel used FBI jets for personal travel multiple times, trips that had no legitimate law enforcement purpose, trips to vacation destinations, trips that coincided with personal events. Each use of a government jet cost tens of thousands of dollars, and Patel is accused of using them like they were his personal aircraft. The filings also allege he arranged FBI protective details for his romantic partner. These are armed agents pulled off actual security duties to provide protection for someone who faces no credible threat and who has no official position that would justify protection. It's an abuse of government resources for personal benefit. Plain and simple. The Epstein files controversy that emerged during the hearing is particularly explosive. Members of Congress presented a timeline. Initially, as Congress was debating the Epstein Files Transparency Act, Patel made public statements supporting disclosure. He said transparency was important, that the American people deserved answers, that the FBI would comply with whatever Congress mandated. This was before the files had been fully cataloged and reviewed. Then, as FBI staff started going through the files in preparation for release, Trump's name appeared in flight logs and other documents, not necessarily in incriminating ways, but in ways that would generate headlines and questions. And that's when Patel's position shifted. Suddenly, Patel started claiming that legal constraints prevented release, that grand jury secrecy applied to more of the files than initially thought, that sealed court orders were broader than previously understood. Congressional staffers documented multiple meetings where they asked Patel's team about the status of the files, and the answers kept changing, the goalposts kept moving, the timelines kept getting extended, and then Judge Berman issued his order calling out these excuses as bogus, which brings us to the congressional hearing, where members from both parties demanded to know why Patel had obstructed release. Patel's defense during the hearing was weak. He claimed he was following legal advice, that FBI lawyers told him certain materials couldn't be released, but members of Congress pointed out that other legal experts disagreed, that the law Congress passed was clear, that Patel seemed to find legal objections only after Trump's name appeared in the files. They asked him directly, "Did the White House pressure you to withhold these files?" Patel denied it, but his denial wasn't convincing because the timing is too suspicious. The reversal from supporting disclosure to fighting disclosure coincides exactly with when Trump became potentially implicated. One particularly pointed exchange had a Democratic senator asking Patel, "When you said initially that you supported transparency, had you actually reviewed the files yet?" Patel admitted he hadn't. "And when you changed your position and started claiming legal barriers, had you reviewed them by then?" Patel confirmed he had. "And isn't it true that you changed your position after you saw President Trump's name in the documents?" Patel tried to deflect, saying that wasn't the reason, that new legal analysis revealed constraints they hadn't initially recognized, but the senator wasn't buying it. "So you're telling us it's just coincidence that you became concerned about grand jury secrecy right after you discovered the president's name in the files?" Patel had no good answer. Republican members were no easier on him. Several Republican senators who voted for the Epstein transparency law were angry that Patel was obstructing implementation. They voted for disclosure. Their constituents wanted disclosure, and Patel, a Republican appointee, was blocking it. One Republican senator said, "I don't care whose name is in these files. I don't care if it's Democrats or Republicans or presidents or princes. The American people deserve the truth, and you're standing in the way of that for reasons that Judge Berman already said don't hold water." The bipartisan fury was palpable. The hearing also addressed the broader issue of FBI politicization. Democratic members presented evidence of investigations that were opened into Trump's political enemies, of inquiries into journalists who reported critically on Trump, of surveillance of political activists, all actions that Patel authorized or his office directed. And when asked to justify these investigations, Patel claimed they were legitimate law enforcement matters, but he couldn't provide specific predication, the facts that would justify opening an investigation. It became clear that political considerations, not criminal evidence, were driving these investigative decisions. Former FBI officials testified as well, career agents who retired or resigned in protest of Patel's leadership. They described a culture of fear, of agents afraid to work cases that might upset the White House, of management focused on pleasing Trump rather than pursuing justice, of the FBI's reputation and credibility being systematically destroyed. One former assistant director, a Republican appointed under Bush, said, "I spent 30 years at the FBI. I worked for directors appointed by both parties, and I never saw anything like what's happening now. The Bureau is being turned into a political tool, and it's going to take a generation to recover." The testimony and evidence presented during this hearing will have consequences. Multiple committees announced follow-up investigations. Criminal referrals are being considered. More whistleblowers are reportedly coming forward. The pressure on Patel is enormous, and the documentation is too extensive to dismiss as partisan attacks. These are court filings, sworn testimony, internal FBI documents, the kind of evidence that holds up under scrutiny. Okay, let's break down what all this means going forward. First, Patel's position is now untenable. He's facing lawsuits from fired agents, congressional investigations, potential criminal referrals, public outrage from both parties. His credibility is shattered. Even Republicans who might have defended him as a Trump loyalist are backing away, because defending someone who admits he fired agents because superiors told me to is defending corruption. It's not a tenable position. Patel is going to be forced out. The only question is whether he resigns, gets fired by Trump, or gets removed through congressional action. Second, the fired agents' lawsuits are going to expose even more. Discovery in these cases will compel production of documents and testimony, internal FBI communications, White House communications, Patel's own statements and decisions. All of it will become part of the court record, and it will be public. Every ugly detail of how the FBI was politicized will be documented in court filings for everyone to see. This is going to be a drip, drip, drip of damaging revelations over months or years as these cases proceed. Third, this fundamentally damages Trump's political position. He appointed Patel. He directed the purge of FBI agents. He benefited from the obstruction of the Epstein files. This isn't just Patel acting rogue. This is Trump using the FBI as his personal protection squad. And voters are going to see that. The hearings were televised. The evidence is public. Trump can claim this is all a witch hunt, but the documentary evidence is too strong. This is Trump abusing government power to serve his interests, and it's going to hurt him politically. Fourth, the FBI's institutional recovery is going to take years. The damage Patel has done isn't just about fired agents or misallocated resources. It's about the Bureau's culture and credibility. Agents who remain are demoralized. They don't trust leadership. They're afraid to work sensitive cases. The FBI's relationships with other agencies and foreign partners have been damaged. Recruiting talented people to join the Bureau has become harder. Rebuilding is going to require new leadership committed to independence and professionalism. It's going to require demonstrating over time that the Bureau has returned to its mission. Fifth, the Epstein files are going to come out despite Patel's obstruction. Judge Berman's order compels disclosure. Congress has the legal authority to demand them, and now public pressure is enormous. Patel can't hold out much longer. When those files are released, we're going to learn who was involved in Epstein's network. Trump's name will be in there. Other powerful people's names will be in there. And all of Patel's obstruction will have just delayed the inevitable while making himself look guilty. It was a stupid strategy that's backfired spectacularly. Sixth, this sets precedent about FBI independence. The question of whether a president can use the FBI as a political weapon is being answered, and the answer from Congress and the courts appears to be no. You can't fire agents for investigating you. You can't obstruct disclosure to protect political allies. You can't redirect agency resources for political purposes. These actions are illegal and will face consequences. Future presidents will know they can't do what Trump and Patel have done. That's an important precedent for protecting the rule of law. Seventh, criminal exposure is real. If Patel fired agents on Trump's orders to obstruct investigations, that's obstruction of justice. If he withheld Epstein files to protect Trump, that's obstruction. If he used government resources for personal benefit, that's corruption. These aren't just ethical violations, these are crimes. And with all the documentation now public, prosecutors have roadmaps for building cases. Whether they actually bring charges depends on political will and legal standards. But the exposure is real. 8. This energizes oversight. Congress has been too deferential to the executive branch for too long. This hearing showed what aggressive oversight looks like. Members from both parties asking tough questions, demanding documents, presenting evidence of wrongdoing, holding officials accountable in public. This is Congress exercising its constitutional duty, and is popular with voters who want accountability. We're likely to see more of this as other Trump administration officials face scrutiny. 9. Whistleblowers are emboldened. When they see fired agents suing and testifying and being vindicated, other people with knowledge of wrongdoing are more likely to come forward. More FBI agents might blow the whistle. Staff from other agencies might report abuses they've witnessed. The more light that gets shined on corruption, the harder it is to sustain, and whistleblowers are the ones who turn on that light. 10th, This impacts 2026 and beyond. These revelations will be fresh in voters' minds as they head to midterm polls. Democrats will campaign on Trump's corruption and abuse of power. Republicans will have to decide whether to defend Trump and Patel or distance themselves, and voters will make judgments about which party is committed to rule of law and accountability versus which party is willing to tolerate corruption for political gain. This could be a significant factor in election outcomes. Look, here's the bottom line. Congress just eviscerated FBI Director Kash Patel based on devastating new court filings showing he systematically fired agents who investigated Trump, obstructed release of Epstein files when Trump's name appeared, and used government resources for personal benefit. The hearing was brutal. Members from both parties demanding answers, Patel unable to provide satisfactory explanations, documentary evidence contradicting his claims, and it was all televised for the country to see. This is about more than one corrupt official. This is about whether American institutions can be weaponized for partisan political purposes, whether the FBI serves the president personally or serves the rule of law, whether powerful people can obstruct investigations into their own conduct. And the answer from Congress and the courts is increasingly clear. No, this isn't acceptable. There will be consequences. Patel is finished. His career is over. He'll likely face legal jeopardy. The FBI will eventually recover, but it will take time and new leadership. The Epstein files will come out despite his efforts. Trump will be politically damaged by association with this corruption, and the precedent will be set that future abuses will face accountability. We're watching in real time as the system pushes back against authoritarianism and corruption. It's not working perfectly. The damage has been done, but Congress exercising oversight, courts enforcing the law, whistleblowers coming forward, fired agents suing, all of it shows that the system has antibodies, that corruption can be exposed and fought, that officials who abuse power can be held accountable. That gives some hope for the future even as we document the damage of the present. Stay tuned, folks, because there are more revelations coming, more hearings, more lawsuits, more accountability, and Kash Patel is going to regret ever agreeing to be Trump's FBI director because his attempt to serve Trump above the law is going to end his career and possibly land him in prison. And that's what happens when you betray your oath and your country for a politician.